Ladies and gentlemen, we have an American crisis on our hands. It's not simply because Kamala Harris put up by the Democratic Party to be the nominee, even though that is a crisis, because she's an out and out blatant Marxist. And the news, that is Fox News and conservative news outlets, they're doing a great job in exposing all of that. We'll talk more about that in another podcast. But the real deep concern that I have is this moral deterioration that we have in the people of America. And the moral deterioration is fostered by this atheistic worldview that is put out by Marxism and the neo-Marxist of the world. Well, to begin, I want to quote from Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster, a great statesman of yesteryear from the 19th century. He made this comment regarding the principles of the Bible. And I know this is something that many people are not used to hearing. They're not familiar with it. They think, what in the world is he talking about? Listen carefully to what he has to say. If we abide by the principles taught in the Bible, our country will go on prospering and to prosper. But if we and our posterity neglect its instructions and authority, no man can tell how suddenly a catastrophe may overwhelm us and bury all of our glory in profound obscurity. I say, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly where we are today. If we don't turn this ship around, and if we don't put out this Marxism, which is fostering such gross immorality in our country, which we'll talk about in a moment, if we don't put that aside and we don't turn the ship around, then we are doomed as a free nation. We'll be here, people will be here, but we'll not enjoy the freedom and liberty that our forefathers have enjoyed. Arnold Toynbee is a noted historian. He observed this. Of the 22 civilizations that have appeared in history, 19 of them have collapsed when they reached the moral state the United States is in now. And he spoke that in the 1960s. The evidence is clear across America, and that is that there is a moral deterioration. Unless there is a deep down change in the American people, as one Washington correspondent from the 1960s, May Craig, stated, she passed away in 1975. She stated that must be a genuine crusade against self-indulgence and immorality. Public and private, then we are witnesses to the decline and fall of the American Republic. That calls to mind what Edward Gibbon, in a classic Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, listed as the following reasons that the Roman Empire collapsed. Number one, the rapid increase of divorce, the undermining of the dignity and the sanctity of the home, which is the basis of human society. We might stop right here, not simply the divorce, but also you might notice Black Lives Matter put right on their website, the very front page of it, that it was to get rid of, destroy the nuclear family. What do they mean? They meant the family, mom, dad, and the kids. They wanted to get rid of that. Isn't it amazing that Black Lives Matter, a neo-Marxist organization, Patrisse Cullors, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and these all trained by long-standing, lifelong Marxists, that actually the Black Lives Matter have been furthered by many people in the pulpits, that many people who are black preachers, they support this, and they put up signs regarding Black Lives Matter and supporting Black Lives Matter with social media. It's just amazing to me how abysmally ignorant that we can be. The number one plank right on the front page was, or one of the planks was on the front page, they may have erased it by now, and I think they probably have, of Black Lives Matter, was to get rid of the nuclear family in America. And yet preachers, conservative preachers, are going to support Black Lives Matter. Kamala Harris has supported Black Lives Matter with her money, with her votes, with her rhetoric all across this country. That's Edward Gibbon's number one, the undermining of the sanctity of the home. Number two, higher and higher taxes and spending of public monies for free bread and circuses for the people. High taxes, high taxation. We see this continually. The Democratic Party has only one solution to the deficit, and that is tax the people more. Kamala Harris wants to tax the people more, perhaps even up to 75%. They just want to continue on the socialistic Marxist track that they're already on. Number 3, this is Edward Gibbon. Number 3, the mad craze for pleasure. Sports becoming every year more and more exciting and more brutal. What is that to say? That is to say that the American people have become so shallow in their thinking that all we can do, seemingly, is to think about sports, entertainment, fun, games, nothing else. And it gets to anything deeper than that, we have a hard time following. Number 4, this is from Edward Gibbon. The building of gigantic armaments when the real enemy, he said, is within. The decadence of the people. And we can see that immediately in America. And then number 5, the decay of religion. Faith fading into a mere form, losing touch with life and becoming too weak to warm and guide the people. It's interesting that so many people in the school system today, I've come out of the school system, but so many people in public education are under the persuasion that our country never was a Christian nation, that we don't have any roots to call ourselves back to regarding Christianity, that it was a secular nation from the beginning. It's almost as if, how do they get into education with such lack of education? That's what I want to know. All you have to do is go back and read the founders and read what they said themselves regarding the founding of our nation to be dispelled of that nonsense that it's a secular nation from the beginning. But we have people at the university level, at the school board level, in the classroom level, in our high schools, right here in Wichita Falls area, right here in Burke-Burnett area, the people in the school system saying, well, we never were a Christian nation. We're not to be a Christian nation, never were. I just wonder how it is that educators cannot take the blinders off their eyes and look and see and do their own research on this and discover what the reality is. But the reality is we were a Christian nation, and God said that any nation that is filled with iniquity will be overthrown. Genesis chapter 15 and verse 16. The psalmist David wrote that the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. Psalms 19 and 7. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 34, Solomon observed, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. You know what the left hates so badly is when Donald Trump, when he was president, I remember standing up, holding a Bible and talking about our roots as a Christian nation. They just went crazy over that. They said, well, he has not lived his life as he should have. You know, who has? Who has been perfect in their living? Who has been flawless in Christian living? But at least he was sensible enough to note how wrong we have been in our history, and we need to go back to our Christian biblical roots. But that's what the left hates. They just despise it. And the left is, of course, represented by the Marxist, the Democratic Party. There is really a war against Christianity worldwide. We'll talk about the Olympics here in just a moment. And in America, witness the shameless satanic mockery, for example, of the Paris Olympics. We'll talk about in a moment. But it has caused global outrage. And here's something interesting. The First Lady, Jill Biden, supported it. She said it was a beautiful and a display in the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games. This is not surprising. The Democratic Party, from the 2012 platform on, removed God from all mention of God in the Democratic Party platform. It was a premeditated, anti-theistic stance that was quickly revised when the public was made aware of what was going on, and so they put in a God. Everybody should have a God-given or live up to the God-given potential. This is interesting. PolitiFact, which is not a conservative base, said over time, I'm quoting now, the Democratic Party has reduced its use of the word God in its platform. In 2004, the platform included the phrase, one nation under God, and also referred to God's children, the eyes of God, God's gifts. That was 2004. 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, according to PolitiFact, the only references to God in the platform were to God-given potential. I simply point that out to show us that this is a snapshot of what is occurring in America precisely where we have gone and why there is an American crisis. We have forgotten God, and the Democratic Party, led by the Marxists, the neo-Marxists like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Obama, who's pulling the strings behind the scenes, obviously, they have cast God behind their backs, as the Old Testament prophets would say. But that's what Obama and them wanted to do. That's why he mocked people who have the Bible and their guns. So they're coming after your Bible and the guns. So let's talk about that Olympic, openly, brazenly celebrating Satan and mocking Christianity. The opening ceremonies just the other day of Paris Olympics began with a ceremony that featured a crew of drag queens and dancers performing a blasphemous parody of the Last Supper. During the brazenly mocking show, a group of 18 performers, including 3 drag race France queens, so-called, struck poses behind a long table set up to resemble the Last Supper as it was depicted by Leonardo da Vinci. But seated at the center of the stage, or center of the table, was an ornately dressed fat woman with a large silver headdress crafted to resemble a halo as depicted in the paintings of Jesus, according to the New York Post. Models dressed in drag showcased themselves to pose as the apostles at the long table. And on the center, that is on top of the center of the table, was a scantily dressed man painted blue representing the Greek god Dionysius. But outrage erupted across the globe because of the satanic display whose message differs nothing from artists' depiction of the cross and a bottle of urine. Remember that? Sponsored by the National Endowment of the Arts years ago, where they had a cross of Christ depicted in a bottle of urine. That is simply blasphemy. It's simply an in-your-face, blasphemous depiction of their thoughts of Christianity. They hate Christianity, and it is sponsored by your tax money. That was the National Endowment of the Arts. And here's the National Committee of the Olympic Committee depicting the Lord's table as a satanic Dionysius display. House Speaker Mike Johnson rightly went on to say, "The war on our faith and traditional values knows no bounds today." SpaceX, Tesla, and ex-owner Elon Musk called it extremely disrespectful to Christians, and he put it very lightly. Christian actress Candace Cameron Bure felt compelled to comment that to see the opening ceremonies completely blaspheme and mock the Christian faith was disgusting, and it made me so sad. But I think the clearest, the best, and concise condemnation came from comedian Rob Schneider, who says, "I am done with the 2024 Paris Olympics," and he's boycotting the Olympics, and I am too. "I'm sorry to say to all the world's great athletes, I wish you all the best. I cannot watch the Olympics that disrespects Christianity and openly celebrates Satan." I say to him, bravo, that's exactly right. You're right on target, Rob. What about all those athletes who've trained so long and hard? I do feel bad for them, but you know what? I would like to, and this is what I think about it, I wonder where the athletes are that put Christ and Christianity above athletics and their athletic ability. Remember what God said about it in 1 Timothy chapter 4, bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness profits in all things. Where are the athletes who are Christian enough and putting godliness above athletic ability that would say, I see this display, I'm hopping a plane and I'm riding home? You know very well that if that had been a mockery, let's just say that they had depicted Muhammad as a drag queen, that Muslims would have been outraged. They would have been not displaying their athletic ability in the games. The same thing can be said for other people in other classes of society. They would have very quickly been exiting the stage. And where are the Christians who supposedly stand up for principle saying, well, I'm just not going to watch Rob Schneider. What a great comment. He says, you know, I'm done. I'm punching out of here. We're not going to watch the satanic display. I would like to know, where are those athletes that after the satanic display thumbed their nose and stuck their finger in the eye of Christians, didn't just jump a plane and leave? Where are the international athletes that put principle ahead of personal achievement? I tell you, it's time to make some tough decisions in this country and in this world. And I suggest that Christians boycott the Olympics. But here comes Paris spokesperson Anne Descamps. Claimed on Sunday, she came back just 2 days ago and said, well, clearly there was never any intention to show disrespect to any religious group. If any people have taken offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry. You know, it's almost astounding how stupid she expects the Christian world to be. What do you mean we didn't intend any offense anywhere? And I'm really no intention? Really, really sorry? No. You know what? If they had done that to Muhammad, they would be trying to rebuild the Eiffel Tower because they would be tearing it down. They would be trying to the Muslims would actually destroy what was going on in Paris, as they already are anywhere on the streets. Police don't even go into some of the Muslim neighborhoods in Paris because they can't be protected there. They're already beheading people who say such things. You know very well what has gone on here. It's absolutely shameful. So, Anne Descamps, you know what? Too little, too late. This apology, and that apology is fine. But you know what? If these Christian athletes would just boycott it and get out of there, and people would not watch it, they would change their tune and they would stop doing that kind of stuff. But they're going to continue doing it and then coming back with some half-hearted apology, as long as we are so open-minded and tolerant to put up with this blasphemous depiction of Christianity. And I am so ashamed of our First Lady, Jill Biden, who praised this opening ceremony as the best ever. Now comes Kelby Vera. Kelby Vera on a liberal outlet, telling us some people slam the tableau as mocking Christianity, but the artistic director explained the scene was inspired by the Greek god of celebration. This is the Huffington Post. Kelby Vera is the author. So she says, well, you slam this mockery of Christianity, but the artistic director explains the scene was inspired by the Greek god of celebration, Dionysius. Oh, don't you know, you stupid people, that this is all about Dionysius? Listen, Kelby, everybody knows that. You're not telling us anything. We know what Dionysius and who Dionysius was depicted as on the table. That doesn't explain why they put the Lord's table as depicted by Leonardo da Vinci up there to mock. We know that it involved Dionysius. That doesn't explain anything, the artistic director said. So conservatives, she says, angered by the Paris Olympics, might need to pivot the criticism of Friday's opening ceremony. No, we're not going to pivot the criticism. Don't treat us like we're stupid. We know what was going on. She says, well, people are so incensed over this appearance to resemble the drag-infused interpretation of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. They didn't deny that this is exactly what the depiction was. That's exactly what it was. And it was blasphemous. She says, well, the artistic director, Thomas Jolly, says, I want to clarify my vision. And the vision explaining this is a tribute to Dionysius, the Greek god of decadence and celebration. There is a Dionysius who arrives on the table. This is absolutely incredibly astounding how ridiculous the defense is. We know exactly what you're trying to do, but putting the Lord's table on it has nothing to do with Dionysius except to mock it and to have the drag queens around it. You're not explaining anything except telling us that you think everybody just is so low-browed and misunderstanding. He goes on to say the idea is to have a pagan celebration connected to the gods of Olympus. You will never find me in a desire to mock and denigrate anyone. You know, just coming out and lying about it is absolutely not supportive of the whole thing. This is what the Huffington Post puts out. But you know, this is exactly what the Biden administration has all been about. The Democratic Party, the Marxist Democratic Party, has been about the leading element in American politics, because Marxism, Christopher Rufo has a great book of all of this called Cultural Marxism. I encourage and urge you to read it. But he points out that Marxism, neo-Marxism, has taken over every element of our society. Entertainment, it has taken over the deep state or the corporate world. They bow and put money into Black Lives Matter. And they do the DEI hiring. That's all Marxism. The government, controlled by Democrats, the deep state of government. Entertainment, sports doing their obeisance to DEI. Everything is about cultural Marxism now. And the Biden administration has actually demonstrated to us precisely what exactly they have in mind to destroy America by this DEI, neo-Marxism, that is also the same thing that we see in the Olympics. For example, who was it that they had over the nation's nuclear waste program? Fired now because it came out so boldly, stealing luggage in Las Vegas, Minneapolis, and that is, of course, Sam Britton, the man who wears dresses, heels, lipstick at the energy department. They had to fire him finally because, as was pointed out, stealing luggage at different airport carousels. So the light-fingered lavender boy claims he was gender fluid, non-binary, participates in sadist sexual practices, now can devote more time honing his skills as a thief. But that's exactly who the Biden administration put up in the energy department. It's absolutely incredible that the American people would put up with this kind of nonsense. So now Britain can go on to do the things he loves best: pup play, homo-spanking seminars, advocating underage homosexual prostitution. That's what the Biden administration's all about. But the administration doesn't stop there. How about this Richard Levine, a doctor who calls himself Rachel, number 2 federal health official. Levine, who pretends he's a woman, wants to give transgender kids gender-affirming medical care, which means dangerous puberty blockers, mutilating surgeries such as penectomies and mastectomies and everything else. Levine also wants pediatricians to become tyranny propagandists. This is what the Biden administration and the Kamala Harris administration is all about. Amusingly, mainstream media is going to go along with it. USA Today, they went along with all of this charade. It named Chubby Levine one of the Women of the Year, one of its Women of the Year, which may only prove that a man can do anything a woman can do, only better, including being a woman. And more amusingly, Levine is running thither and yon in an admiral's uniform. But he's not commanding officer of the USS Harvey Milk, named for a homosexual rapist. He's head of the U.S. Public Health Service, running around pretending he's an admiral and a woman. But this is exactly what the Biden administration's all about. This is what DEI is all about. Biden's choice for monkeypox czar was a flaming homosexual called Dmitry Daskalakis. He wears satanic accoutrements, looks like one of the village people. And his appointment proves what everyone knew when the monkeypox scare began. And like AIDS, it's a disease that is almost exclusively confined to homosexual men. And another slap in the face to normal Americans. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, a lesbian immigrant from Haiti. She made everyone sure that they knew that the reason that she was a spokesperson taking the place of Jan Psaki was that she was a woman, a black woman, and a lesbian, and an immigrant. Because according to DEI, that puts her far ahead of people who have real qualifications for a job. Same thing with Ketanji Brown Jackson. When it was all over the news, you saw it on every channel, I suppose, where Joe Biden calling up Ketanji Brown Jackson says, we want you to be a Supreme Court justice because we want to look like America. Look like America. Qualifications aside, we want, in other words, a black woman. We want you up, who can't even define what a woman is, but we want a black woman. She doesn't know what a woman is. She says she didn't know what a woman was. And yet that's the kind of thing that we have. That's the Biden administration. And yet we have people right now today in the mainstream media picking up the mantra that says, well, Donald Trump is weird. Astoundingly stupid has become the mainstream media. They want us to be that ridiculous lack of sense. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yet they want to say Donald Trump is weird. And that's the word that they're picking up and saying right now on all the news outlets. The Donald Trump is weird. Donald Trump is weird. They tried to say that he was a threat to democracy. That didn't work. They tried to put him in jail. The FBI itself lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. We have a deep state that is continuing to try to bury him. And now they're saying he's weird. And yet with this display of a freak show that the Biden administration and the Kamala Harris administration has had in place. What an irony. What an irony. America has a crisis, and it is a crisis of moral compass. We don't have a moral compass that it should be. Let's get back to biblical values in a country, and we need to elect a man who wants to roll back government and allow people to enjoy the freedom, and that is Donald Trump.